Hello, everybody, and welcome to my stream. Welcome to Office Hours here on August 22nd, 2023. I'm glad you're here with me, hanging out, ready to do some coding today. Let's go through this little list here, see what's going on here. What's going on with me basically is it's been a bit of a roller coaster this last week. Not really one of those fun ones, but kind of one of those ones that spins around and makes you sick. As you can hear, my voice is still a little bit gravelly because this sickness is kind of being stubborn. I felt like I was fully recovered on Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, I kind of, not fully recovered Friday, but basically on my way to fully recovered. But I'm still kind of getting a little lingering symptoms, so I'm feeling fine though. I'm pretty sure at the tail end of it, but it's still a little tiring and still has effect on my voice and respiratory system. So I apologize for that. Any sort of sniffling you're going to hear over the next few hours, I'll try to keep it to a minimum. I'm sorry. I got myself a nice hot cup of coffee. Hopefully that'll help. New mug here from HBS. The other thing that's going on is the jury duty thing. I mentioned this before. I'm still on call for jury duty technically, and I went in yesterday, and they basically, before I even got into the building, they said, "Oh, never mind. You don't need to come in today." So that's twice in a row now I've gone in and been told to go home because, usually the case is many cases don't actually go to trial. They get like a plea bargain or whatever sort of thing, bench, what do you call it? Where you just let the judge decide a bench case or whatever. Oh, hey, I guess ads are on. Streamlabs did not tell me that this time, but welcome back from the ads. And I was just recapping my jury duty. I'm technically still on jury duty the next today. Well, they told me not to come in today already, but so Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, technically speaking, I'm on jury duty, but it's likely that I will not be called in anymore because I've already been called in twice, and there's multiple other groups that are being called in. So unless there's like some crazy amount of trials that just pop into existence this week, which is always possible, of course, I will not be going to jury duty, though technically still on trial. So if I see the jury duty signal up in the sky, then I'll have to go and go to that. But that's what's going on here. And also, if you were here on Friday watching the stream, I'm sorry. It was a disaster. It's dropped so many times. Let's see. That's weird. They usually do jury duty by a trial here, not a pool like you were describing. Yeah, I mean, I've never done that before. But my understanding is, the way it works in Ohio is when you're on jury duty, you're on call for 2 weeks. You don't come in unless they tell you to. They tell you the day before to come in. And then one other detail I learned from the jury person there is that there are four groups of people that are on call. And so she kind of rotates between them. So if I'm in group 1, for instance, then tomorrow group 2 is going to be the one that's called if there's a trial, and then group 3 and 4 and so on. So you can see with only 3 days left, if there's 4 total groups, then the odds of me getting called in are pretty slim. Ohio has to be different. Well, you can't be better without being different, right? So anyway, that's what's going on there. So again, I apologize for the stream on Friday. I was, still a little coffee and sniffly, but also the streaming quality was terrible. The connections were dropped half a dozen times. I'm not even going to bother with the video. It's just going to be a mess. So basically, what you missed on that one is finishing up the create article endpoint and testing it out. I had some problems towards the end because, sorry, because I was generating some fun blog posts from Surly Dev and pasting them into JSON. But the JSON I created was, what I learned later was it was not valid JSON. So that's why the endpoint was bombing out on that. So Eventually got it to work. It worked just fine, and I committed that into GitHub. You could see the record of this. If you go, in fact, let's just go take a look real quick. If we go to the, that's not what I wanted. What I want is the actions here. You can see the, to get over, yeah. So these are the 3 commits. Oh, sorry, 2 commits. So I finished the controller action integration test and everything. I had forgotten to put the correct secrets into GitHub secrets, so that's why this second one was committed, but there you go. It's all set. Sometimes I do this. I make a little note to myself in the commit message of like, hey, you need to get stuff out of this, get collection names out of the config. So I need to do that eventually. I probably should have created a ticket for that, in fact. Let's say enhancement, remove collection names from config. And so we're going to go and convert that to an issue. Yep. So currently collection names are specified in config, user secrets, environment, but this isn't really helpful or sustainable. So remove them and hard code instead in the NoSQL, in the migrations. Heroes Fan 30, thank you very much for the follow. I'm glad you're here. Welcome. I'm going to recap this project in just a second here, so you know what the heck I'm working on inside the migration project. Just making a note to myself here. There we go. Okay. So yeah, it's been a while. I think it's probably a good time for a recap. Is talking about what I'm actually building. So this is, I'm building a project with ASP.NET, C#, and Couchbase as a database. But what I'm actually building is called Conduit. Now, Conduit is a real-world example app. And what that means is that they give me the real-world example project. This is here's the website for it right here. They give a spec, a common spec, and then anyone can implement that spec with whatever technologies of their choice they want to. And then those get listed here on the website when they're complete, so that people can learn from them and get started with whatever technologies they're interested in. Right? So if you're interested in ASP.NET Core, there's some ASP.NET Core projects here already. I think these either use SQLite or SQL Server, so I'm making one that uses Couchbase, a NoSQL database. Here's one with Lambda and Dynamo. So if you're interested in AWS, like a hardcore AWS, like this would be the way you'd go. And these are written in Go and JavaScript, right? So you can also pick the language you want. If you look at C#, there's only a few of them. This is a new one, actually. Someone just tweeted me about this as well. Is the minimal API with .NET. So that's pretty cool. You know nothing about all of that. Well, that's okay. That's okay. This is something that was relatively new to me as well, but I thought it was such a cool project. And I thought I would build one here on the live stream. ChatGPT is neato. Yes, I agree. I've been using ChatGPT to help me build as well. That's another one of the goals of this project. There are many sort of related goals to this project. Napalm has mixed feelings on minimal APIs. Yes, I do as well. I generally, this might just be because I've been writing ASP.NET like most of my career, and so I'm kind of used to the old way. But yeah, I think they have their place for sure, the minimal APIs. That place is very, very simple, you know, in my opinion anyway, very, very simple, not very much code, types of tiny microservices, I guess. Which there is a place for, absolutely, for sure. I mean, if you look at Node and Express, that was kind of the inspiration for it. And yes, it also lowers the bar for people who are coming from JavaScript, for instance, who are used to writing an app that way with Express and Node. And so it can be very familiar to them. And there is definitely something to be said for familiarity, to get people in the door, understand the cool stuff about it, how it works, and then they can decide how they want to build apps. Keep going that way or doing something else. I just feel like if your app is going to get more complex with a lot more than like a handful of endpoints, you're going to end up either one huge file, which is a bad idea, or you're going to end up with separate files anyway, which, again, fine. But if I'm doing that, I may as well just go ahead and put them in classes. That's kind of my opinion. But there are some interesting things with minimal API you can't really do with the more traditional class and method-based. You can do some interesting meta programming with it. So there's definitely some trade-offs there. Hit the cough button there. So anyway, that's what I'm building. That's what I'm working on. And how far I've gotten is here in the sort of the project plan, the project Kanban board, if you will. This is what I've done so far. So you can see all the stuff that I've finished building. And this is stuff that needs to be done. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the next thing, which is get article. The last thing I did was create article. Now I need to go ahead and get article. Before I get started, I want to make sure, if you were with me on Friday and you stuck around for all the terrible internet connection, I talked about one of the new features in Couchbase Capella, which is the cloud-based version of Couchbase that I'm using, which is to schedule that database being online and being offline to save some money, which is great for development, of course. And I wanted to check that it's following the schedule. It looks like it is. So my Dennis Ritchie database is scheduled on. And so if I go in there and look, you'll see I've got the two buckets, conduit and conduit integration test. So we're all set to go. And so the connection strings are the same already in my project, so we're already good to go with that. So with that in mind, let's look at the specs here. No authentication required for this one. It does require a slug. Returns a single article. As we remember from before, article looks like this, where here's the article information, and this is the actual author information. Now, one thing with the get endpoint is that favorites, with the create endpoint, I don't do any calculation with favorites. With the get endpoint, I do have to do that calculation. So actually, it might make sense to go ahead and not do the get article, but do the favoriting articles instead first. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's a good idea to go in that direction? There's favorite article. There's there's also unfavored article, which we could put off. It's basically the opposite of favorite article, right? I think we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to favorite article first. Hopefully this won't take that long, and then we can go right into the get article from there. So the favorite article is a very similar URL, but it's a post, and it uses keyword favorite after the slug. So that's what we're going to work on, and it returns the article. So again, it's going to return this, but we actually have to calculate the favorites count and favorited things there. Authentication is required for this one as well. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go into the articles slice here, controllers, articles controller, and create a new endpoint here. And this was a post, right? We'll just go ahead and copy this stuff over here. Just for the sake of argument, so HTTP post, it's a post endpoint. We're going to do routes, and up like this one here, I'm saying API, articles, and then it's slug, so we need a placeholder there for slug, and then favorite. This also requires authentication. Wait, is it? Yeah, authorize, sorry, authorize. Okay, public, async, task, am I using action result? Yes. Let me just collapse this here. Okay, and this is going to be favorite article. All it's taking in is a slug. And there we go. So that is the endpoint there. Speaking of ChatGPT, I did go through a whole one of these streams a while back where I tried to build everything with ChatGPT from top to bottom. And I got about 80%. So the ASP.NET stuff, it got pretty good. The Mediator stuff, it did, well, I say the ASP.NET stuff, it did almost 100%. The Mediator stuff, it did maybe about 80% or so. And in fact, I think I used Copilot, not ChatGPT, which is very similar. And then the data layer stuff, it got about 50% right. Yeah, so that's about where that stands. Okay, so as far as favoriting article, I do need to get the, yeah, okay, so this was something I made a note earlier. Make these 3 lines into a convenience method in auth service, and I probably need to go ahead and do that, because I'm going to reuse the same thing here. So we're going to, oh, the other thing was that just because the way this endpoint works, I need both the bearer token and the author username. For this next one, I don't think I need the bearer token. Hey, there's a sidebar here with Napalm Codes. With the Mock stuff in the news lately, feels like OSS is starting to push back finally, which I applaud. These people should be rewarded for the work companies do on their backs. I am curious, though, if it will collapse under its own weight. Companies refusing to pay up, etc., which would slow things down dramatically in our space. Could get interesting in the next couple of years. Yes, so this is more of an economics issue, I think, than anything. It's not a technical issue at all. And with all economics issues, basically the answer is always transaction costs. So when you say companies refusing to pay up, that is maybe the wrong way to characterize it. There might be companies that are just literally like, we are cheapskates, we will not pay anyone, we refuse to, it's against principles, whatever. But I think it's more a matter of, I think companies are absolutely willing to pay for software that they are using to build their own software. I think that's absolutely true for the most part, right? A developer working on their own weekend project, not so much. But a company, yes, willing to pay for that, because the alternative is to build it themselves, right? But that really is the question, like, what does it cost me to pay it beyond just that's what you might think was a small amount, right? Because to the consumer, all costs are transaction costs. So it's not just the money, but it's the who do we pay, how do we pay, how often do we pay, what do we get in return for that pay, how do we identify who to pay and where to pay them, right? So, you think of Mock, it's just one part, right? In this project here, I'm using Mediator, I'm using Mock, I'm using Slugify, I'm using, let's see, look at all these packages here. I'm using bcrypt, email validation, Fluent validation, Swashbuckle. These are all open source projects that I'm using. So how do I, as a developer, communicate this to my company so that they can decide who to pay and how much to pay? And then, of course, once you introduce billing and accounting into the process, well, now I have to submit some sort of documentation of, oh, well, I'm using Mediator, so we need to pay them X amount of money. I recommend we pay them X amount of money. Well, if that leads to paperwork for me, and maybe I can't use it until I get that paperwork approved, but according to company policy, well, now I'm going to be less likely to want to use Mediator because that's a huge transaction cost for me. Yeah, so yeah, some are arrogant that they say build it yourself. Yeah, and there's some companies where it's okay to build everything yourself. Like if you're a pure software company and that's your job is to build some sort of software, it's okay if you want to reinvent something if you think you can do it better. That's totally fine. There are a lot of companies who want to do the right thing, yeah. And hobbyists, yes, absolutely, right. So hobbyists, I think this is the point that Jimmy Bogard made on Twitter or X, is that trying to get money from developers, it's just not going to really fly. They're either going to not do it or they'll switch to a competitor, like another library. And what really you need to do is somehow reach those developers, bosses, basically the people who are ones making decisions about policies, about how do we pay these open source maintainers and so on. And of course, there's the other issue, which is certainly in the news again, although this is not a new issue with HashiCorp, is switching licensing to something like BSL. Because some of these companies are open source companies, at least from their point of view, they're getting fleeced by cloud providers and other larger companies that are basically taking their work and selling it, and not giving HashiCorp or other companies anything for doing that, which is, legal within those other licenses like MIT and Apache 2 and whatever, but it's kind of lousy because I'm investing all this time, resource, labor into building something open source, and then you're going to turn around and sell it, and I don't get any piece of that. It's kind of lame. So your point is it's disingenuous to when people are already on it and they're like, oh, by the way, we got to start charging you. Yeah, disingenuous. I don't know if it's disingenuous. It's more of almost like a necessary evil, where it's like, okay, we're building this cool thing, developers are using it, people are loving it, but then there's a few bad actors, rent seekers, as we'd say in the economics world, who are like, oh, I'll take Terraform and I'll sell it as Matt's Terraform, or I'll make a product that's 90% Terraform, call it Matt's Terraform, and charge people for it. Or in some cases, 100% of Terraform. I'll just resell it as Matt's Terraform, and that's and we've seen that with Amazon and others who go and do that with their own cloud version of whatever open source project. And that's just kind of a bummer for people who are putting all this time and effort and money into these things. And you saw what happened with Docker Desktop. There are other alternatives out there people are running to, and they're struggling to make a value proposition. That's what I was pushing Docker Desktop, as I think the tool's worth it personally. Yeah, and the thing with Docker Desktop is it's, as far as I know, as far as developers and personal use, like it's totally still just as functional and as free as it was before. They're really going after, again, those companies who are maybe running their whole infrastructure on Docker and building Docker containers and using Docker Hub and all these sorts of things, and not giving anything back to the Docker project. So yeah, I understand where they're going with that. I think you mentioned Richard Stallman earlier, and it's all well and good if it's all stuff that stays in academia, right? But once we start to talk about commercial software and buying and selling licenses and support and forking and reselling an open source product, it's I don't think open source licenses as they are today, open source with a capital O, capital S, I don't think they're really the way to go if you're trying to make any money or make a living. And that's why we're seeing a lot of companies going to BSL and other licenses that are open source, but they're not capital O, capital S open source. Right, yeah, right. Yeah, certainly Docker didn't invent containers, right? But containers before Docker were, not something that most people even heard of. So there is something to be said for actually, actually making something accessible. There's definitely some value there. Make some nice side scratch. Ever lucky enough to retire? Yeah, I don't know if there is an answer. If there's a good answer, the answer might be BSL, right? Or just source available, but you have to buy a license, that sort of thing. Commercial licenses. That's been the answer since the I don't know what, did Microsoft essentially kind of popularized, and I wouldn't say invented, but very much popularized licensing. That's basically the model for selling software ever since then. And open source is kind of an aberration that might end up, in terms of commercial viability, just might being a little bit of a speed bump or a diversion. You can count on one hand the number of companies who have been pure open source and, significantly lucrative, I guess, would be the right way to phrase that. Right? Red Hat, you might be able to make that claim. You might be able to make the claim otherwise, right? With Red Hat. Who else? You might say Microsoft, but of course their open source efforts are very much not how Microsoft started. I'm very curious to see, if this is a sort of issue. I feel like it's just a flare up. It's going to go away and people are going to be back to what they're doing before. But, what are some ways that people propose to deal with this? And I really think the issue is not one of technology and, kind of expecting people to do the right thing. But I think it's more of a matter of transaction costs and how do you make it possible in a low transaction cost way for these people to get the funding to match up large companies that are benefiting with the open source projects that are being built, their benefit, right? There's definitely a mismatch there. It's an impedance mismatch. How do you solve that issue? And the answer might be you can't. But I'd be curious to see if anyone comes up with any other ideas for that. Maybe like a not monetized NuGet, but NuGet with some sort of reporting, maybe? I don't know. That sends a report to organization that identifies somehow, like, hey, these are the open source projects you're using, and here's what we suggest based on your usage. And just give them like one bill instead of 15 different projects that you have to go and identify each one. How do I pay them? How much do I pay them? What do I get? Etc. I don't know. I think a solution has got to be something like that, where it makes it easier and really lowers the barrier for companies to get funds to these projects, but does not affect developers' decisions of which libraries to use any more than it currently is. So, microtransactions like games. Yeah, microtransactions, but again, you have to identify what those microtransactions are. Because if we're talking about games, the person playing the game, right? Yes. But with developing software, if Mediator pops up and says, "Hey, you got to buy 5,000 gems to keep using Mediator," guess what? I'm going to stop using Mediator, right? That's not going to work. I'll either build my own thing or use a competitor or whatever. I'm not going to spend the time to get my company to buy 5,000 gems. And enterprise sub for 1 month, pay flat fee for all these libs. Yeah, something like that. But it would have to be something at the NuGet level. And that's just .NET, right? Now we're talking Composer and Gems and all those other, Maven. I'll have to do it as well. The NPM level, something like that. But even then, now I've got, if I'm doing JavaScript in this project, now I've got two different places, NuGet and NPM, where I'm sending bills to my employer, I guess. Or not bills, but suggested donations, that sort of thing. Huge opportunity. Want to go into business? No, I do not want to go in that business at all, because that seems like very, very difficult. And definitely not a technical problem. It's much more of a economic problem, licensing, lawyers type issue. And imagine sending a bill, or like not a bill, but a suggested donation statement for the first time to a company completely unsolicited. All right? They're going to be like, what is this? I'm not paying this. So you get to set up relationships with lots of companies ahead of time and get them to buy in, and then you can get others to buy in, and so on, which seems like a very slow process. Yeah, I mean, basically that's what the mock guy was trying to do. Yes, yes, it was what he's trying to do, but I just think he went about it kind of the wrong way, kind of bothering developers and saying, hey, give me your email address so you can maybe pay me later or get your organization to pay me. But I mean, that to me, that's again trying to solve this issue, with a technical solution, and it's not a technical problem. So, anywho, I would be interested in someone comes up with a good solution. I would be interested in helping them with that, yes, but I'm not interested in starting a business, trying to do that. No way, no way. It has to be somebody at GitHub or NuGet or, NPM, basically Microsoft, because they own all those things now, right? GitHub, NuGet, and NPM. Have to be somebody from those organizations to put together a solution and then try to sell that to all the other places. And we're not talking libraries right now, right? We're not even talking. This is just .NET libraries. Like I'm using Couchbase. That's a database. What if I'm using Kafka or Rabbit? All these other things. There will be SDKs for them, yes, but the actual servers themselves. What about those? And the answer to there is most of the time right now is, SaaS models, licensing, and again, hopefully a nice free tier for developers so they don't, make the decision solely on, is this a licensing model that's good for my app, but is this a good technology or not? Basically, that's what the decision should be. Anyway, yeah, definitely a big tangent. Happy to go on these kind of tangents, but I do have to get some work done today. So favorite article. Yes, I was going to create a extension method. Not extension method, but another method in auth service. So I want to get the username equals auth service dot get. I could probably get both bearer token and username, right? Claims. Get all auth info. Maybe something like that. Request dot headers dot authorization. Something like that. I don't know what's the right name or not. Let's go ahead and create this method. And what I'm thinking of is a new object where it's like auth service dot all info, something like that. I don't have that, but yeah, I'll create a method here. And there'll be I don't know if all info is the right word either, but this will have something like bearer token. It's going to have everything, basically, is what I'm saying. A list of claim results. And one of those will be username, right? So this is going to be, the request header. Let me think about this. So this is, string values, get token from header. Yeah, it's just a string. So if I change this to string, is that going to blow up? No, but it's going to say, it might be null. That's fine. Okay. And this needs to be called authorization header. And we'll do that down here. Authorization header. Okay, and I can just get token from header. So I'm going to reuse that. Token equals get token from header, authorization header. Okay, and I'll have a new all info. Return all So we can all dot bearer token equals token. Let's go ahead and call this bearer token, in fact. And then I'll start adding those claims. So claims equals new list of claim results. So the first one will be get email claim from the bearer token. And we'll also get username claim, bearer token. There we go. So these claims, okay. Well, the problem with these claims is that they're not really named. So let's do this. Let's do it like this. Username, email. Instead of making a list, this will be easier to consume as well. Email equals get email claim of the bearer token dot value. Email claim equals, yeah, because it might not be in there, right? We have to assume that it might not be in there. So bearer token, and then we can say if email claim is, if not is not found, then all dot email equals email claim dot value. If it's not the case that username claim is not found, then all dot username equals username claim dot value. Okay. Although I'm just destroying information here, so maybe it's better to just say just return the claim. And then I'll have the information of whether it's there or not. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So I can get rid of all this stuff. Okay, and we'll go and do that. So now, if I do get all auth info, which doesn't need to be async, this is going to give me everything. So then back here, I can say I need the bearer token. So this isn't going to save a lot of code here, but it will someplace else. So claims.bearer token and author username equals claims.username.value. So that's kind of a convenience method. I don't know about the whole name. Get all auth. Yeah, get all auth info sounds fine. I'm okay with that. Okay, so I can do the same thing here. And I can assume that there will be claims because this endpoint's authorized. So there will definitely be a token. It's just that I can't assume that it will have both username and email. Although I guess that's what I'm doing here, is assuming that it does have username. I don't see why it wouldn't, I guess. I guess if someone sent me some sort of token they generated themselves, maybe. Could be something wonky in there, but I don't think they can do that without knowing my secrets. So I think it's probably safe. All right, favorite the article. So you need to be logged in for this. And I need basically just the slug and the user who is favoriting it. Yes? Yes, okay. So then a request equals new favorite article request. That's going to be request dot username equals claims dot username dot value, and request dot slug equals slug. Slug is required, but I think that's okay. I don't think this will work if I don't put a slug in here. I don't think this endpoint will even work at all. So anyway, and then I can go ahead and response equals mediator send. This needs to be async. Send off that request. Okay, and the response is going to be a favorite article response, which I don't have yet. And it also needs the author profile. Yes. Equals await mediator.send new, was it profile? Get profile request of the user who wrote the article. So that needs to be response dot something. I don't know what's the I don't know, response dot author username, something like that. Okay, and then, whoa, much like I did up here, we're going to return an article view. Okay, no, this is okay, forget that. All right, if there's any, yeah, we're going to call this article view. If there's any validation errors, then return them. What's the problem with this? Because I haven't actually created this class yet. And then return the combined view. Yes, okay, great. So now I need to go and start creating these classes. So we're in the articles, handlers, create a favorite article request. It's going to be I request, and that returns favorite article response, which I don't have yet either, which is just a DTO. Okay, and then, so we're good there. So that needs to have a username. And a slug. Okay. If you're not familiar with a slug, the term slug, that's basically a version of the article title made for URL. So it's going to be lowercase, it have dashes instead of spaces. It's just creating that slug with a library called Slugify. I have written my own slug helpers in the past, but I went with a tried and true library out there. And I guess that's another part of the open source funding argument is, you know, Slugify is very helpful, right? I could have written my own. I didn't. I don't want to write my own. But overall, as part of my application, slugs are important, but they're not like, I don't spend a lot of my application using the Slugify library. It's a relatively small contribution. Versus Mediator, in this case, which is a lot of the application is built on Mediator. And Couchbase, a lot's built on Couchbase. So now Couchbase is actually BSL, if you weren't aware. So it's not open source with a capital OS. So maybe it doesn't apply to Couchbase, but let's say Mediator. Mediator and Slugify. If I'm creating this, let's say, bill, let's call it a bill, although it's more like a suggested donation, that NuGet's compiling, obviously it's not going to make sense to give the exact same amount of money to Slugify Slugify contributors as it does the Mediator author and contributors. So how do I figure that out? Do I just count the number of lines of code that use Mediator, and then how do I do that? So now I have to submit my code base to this authority that analyzes it for some sort of ratio. Yeah, so again, that's a technical issue. We can solve that. But now we're back to sending all my code base to some third party. And there are a lot of companies and teams, organizations that are not going to do that. So some instrumentation in the libraries to see how often they're being called. Again, companies aren't going to like that either, sending out data, even if it's anonymized data, about how much a library is being used. So, I don't know. Maybe you have to just kind of assign a weight to a library. Like Slugify, it's a class 1 out of 10. It's a relatively minor helper library. Doesn't mean it's not useful or not good, but it's just relatively minor compared to mediator, which would be like a 8, which is a much higher weighting on a project. Typically, you're not using mediator in one place in a code base like this. You're using it all over the place. Whereas Slugify, you're using it maybe in one slice. So again, not a technical problem, much more of an economic problem. Okay, response. I don't have, wait. Oh, it's not called response anymore. I call it article view. Okay. So my response is, yeah, it's typically like this. It's this. So this is going to be a very similar response. But it's all, yeah. But do I also want the, what is an article view model? Does that include username? Yes, it does. No. This is for viewing. Okay, so I also need the author username. Yes. How did I deal with that up here? So it was a similar issue, right? Oh, I pulled it from the token because the author is the one creating the article. Whereas down here, I'm not necessarily the author. I'm favoriting an article. In fact, most of the time I'm not the author. I'm favoriting someone else's article. So I need to return that as part of this view. So change that to var. 2 parameters. Yeah, and the bearer token's optional. I don't need to provide that. In fact, if it's optional, why do I have it? Yeah, it should be an optional parameter. Okay, and then combine them together with this profile request. Yeah, okay. So this is get auth info. This is send request to mediator. Get author profile as well. And I need to also process validation errors. From that, get author profile as well, return the combined view. So these controllers are doing a little bit more than, or these endpoints, I should say, doing a little bit more than a lot of the endpoints in the user controller. But I think it's okay. Because the alternative here is, well, I'm not really sure. I guess I could push this all down to the data layer. But if I do that, then I'm going to be just duplicating stuff in the data layer too. So I think it's okay to go this direction. All right, so here is the request. There is the response. So now I just need the handler. Public class favorite article handler. I request handler. So I need the request, favorite article request, favorite article response. Finally got the hang of which order to put those in. Okay. I don't know why this retry is up here. Alrighty, make this async. I probably need a constructor. Do I need any sort of validation here? We got a slug, favorite article request. This username is going to come from the bearer token, so it's always going to be something. Slug is always going to be something. Potentially someone could give me a slug that doesn't exist, but I'm going to check for that at the data layer for sure. And return it is not found, except return is not found basically. So in fact, that would be just a validation error that I would add to that model. So I don't think I need to put any validations in here, Fluent validators. I probably will need the article data cert conduit article collection provider. Yep. Yeah. Okay. All right. No, no, that's not what I want. It's the wrong level of abstraction. What I want is the I article data service. Yes, which itself uses that collection provider. Okay, I need to refill my coffee cup, so I will be right back in less than 1 minute. I promise, less than a minute. All right, was that less than a minute? Nice piping hot cup of coffee. This coffee mug brought to you by HBS.net. I believe they were a sponsor at a conference I went to recently. So thank you for the mug, HBS. What is HBS? Where did I see them at? HBS.net. They are, it looks like software consulting company, Wisconsin. So I bet I saw them at that conference. That I think that is right. I remember seeing them. There's a lot of these companies that are 3 letters, so I get them mixed up sometimes. But there you go. So thank you, HBS, for sponsoring that conference. Thank you for the coffee mug. Delicious. Okay. All right, so no validation checks here. Basically what I want to do is I want to, this is going to be very simple, right? Wait, and I'm just doing favorite. Request.slug, request.username. That's pretty much it. And I guess I could put in a check at some point to see, did you already favorite this? But I don't think there's any point to that, because there's an unfavored endpoint as well. Did you hear back from Dog Food Con? I have not heard back a single thing from Dog Food Con. I'm not really even sure, who is the primary owner of the Twitter account and stuff like that, but they didn't respond to me on the DM yet. Well, it's a shame. It's a shame. There are lots of in-person events that are hurting, and that I don't know what their status is financially, but a lot of events already razor thin. Community events were razor thin margins. In many cases, negative margins that are struggling to get by, and I'm going to guess that's what happened. It's also possible that whoever is organizing that is very busy or moved away or has other stuff going on in their life. Data, what is it? What do they call it? Data results, data service result. Yes. Article. Okay, and there's that. So I don't know if I hear anything, I will mention it on the stream certainly, or tweet about it or whatever. But I've not heard anything back from them. But there is another conference coming up this Friday, in fact, in Columbus, called JavaScript and Friends. Let me go ahead and give them a shout out here. JavaScript and Friends. Okay, so the ad break is going to start in less than 3 minutes. That's what I'm seeing here in Streamlabs. JavaScript and Friends. It's this Friday. I'm a speaker there. Usually sign up for sure if you're in the Columbus area or nearby. And see all kinds of great stuff they got. All these great speakers, including myself, Guy Royce. I mean, I know most of these people. Heath Murphy, Dave Fancher's coming in. That's pretty cool. Chad Green, Bob Fornell. I'm not sure who these people. Some of these people are. I'm not sure. Eric Potter's coming in. So lots of the crew is coming in from nearby. So definitely check it out. You can register for that event right there on Eventbrite. But I will be there this Friday unless there's some crazy jury duty thing happening. I will be there as well. So I'll be talking about data modeling, I believe. Okay, so favoriting. This should be async. Oops. So collection. So wait. Well, here's the thing. Do I have any place to store favorites? I don't have that yet, do I? I don't. So the question is, how do I store favorites? Seems like it would belong in another collection, like a favorites collection. And there would be a document per user in that collection. Yes, makes sense. Just like I'm doing with follows. Pretty much the same type of thing. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'll just go ahead and, in fact, copy this because it's very similar. But I'm going to rename it to 006, create collection for favorites. This is very, very similar to follows, except it's basically a favorite, or it's a follow of an article. Whereas a follow is for a person, a favorite is for an article. So basically the same sort of thing. I'm going to go ahead and stop using the collection name here, and we're just going to call it favorites. Just hard code it, just like I was talking about earlier. Maybe we'll take the first step here, and this needs to be migration number 6. I keep making these notes about manual alternatives. It really doesn't make sense. So we'll see you after the ad break, everybody, if you're not a subscriber. Okay. The ad break's going to be over in 3 minutes. So, okay, this is kind of cool. It's showing me when it starts and then when it ends. Getting the hang of this ad break stuff. That's a long ad break, though. Although what I've heard in the past is it might not be that long for everybody who's watching. So, okay, so I got this favorites. I don't have a favorites. What's it called? Collection provider. iConduit favorites collection provider, which again I'm not going to use the config for that. I'm going to keep the scope name config. I think that's important. And let's see. That's in data access providers. So very similar to this. Public interface. I named collection provider. Whoa. Put that in its own file. Why not? Okay. So articles data service is also where I'm going to keep the favorites as well, because you really can't have favorites without articles, or vice versa, right? So they're closely related. I think it's okay to put them in the same service. So I just need collection equals favorites collection provider, and it's going to be get collection async. Yes, this needs to be await though. I spelled collection very wrong. There we go. Okay. Now, how did I do this with follows? I'm pretty sure I just used the set, right? Let's see. Data access, providers, models, DTO. Where am I? Oh, their services are up elsewhere. With follows, I used, yeah, I just did a set. So I'm basically going to do the same thing here. Except it's not going to be follows, it's going to be favorites. And the username will be username. And we're going to add the slug to that set. Ad break is over in 5 seconds. Welcome back, everybody, from the ad break. 9 ads to 1 by connection cycling. Oh my gosh. Oh, maybe they didn't. Looks like they caught you after all. That seems like a lot. 9 ads, my goodness. I don't know if I'm worth it. But I appreciate you hanging around, Napalm. Okay, so we're adding the slug to a user's list of favorites. Well, not favorite. Yes, favorites, right? Favorites collection provider. So I also need to return the article. Yeah, so I actually need to get the article now. So that's another thing this needs to do, or should it? No, I don't think it should. I don't think it should. I think yeah. I don't think it should return anything. This is really a mutation. It needs to be a mutation on its own. So it needs to be a second call here in the this should be called favorite article. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm putting its own file here eventually, but this needs to make a second call to get the article. So that will go ahead and update the favorites. And well, let me think about this. Really, this should be. There should be. In fact, now I'm thinking about it, there's going to be a lot of duplicated code here. Why not just have another handler to get the author profile? Or, sorry, the article with author profile. Why wouldn't I do that? I think that makes a lot more sense. Should have done it to begin with. Okay. Okay. So create article handler. That's all fine. But the thing with this is it does actually it avoids a trip to the database. Because it's already got this stuff in memory. So maybe leave that the way it is. But this one does not have that. I don't have the article like in hand, in memory. So I'm going to make a database call anyway. So why not ask handler for the article view. Yeah, why don't I do that? So next, another request equals, and this is going to be at the get, essentially, another endpoint. So it's kind of good. We're doing this and get kind of at the same time, really. So let's go ahead and put this over here. So we're kind of working on both now at the same time. So I'm going to call this a favorite request. Get request equals new get article request. All I need for that is the slug. Not true. Not true. I also need, let me look at this endpoint. authentication is not required, but there's no way I can calculate favorites count, and following without me being logged in. So it should be optional. But in this case, logged in anyway. So claims dot username. Yes? Yes. Okay. So back here in not in follows, in articles, handlers, another get article request. I request get article response. Get article response. Okay, and that's going to have article view model, which, if I'm not mistaken, is exactly what I want to show to the endpoint. So yes, it should return view model. That's fine. It can also have some validation errors, because you could potentially specify a slug doesn't exist, that sort of thing. Favorite article request. Yes, I want this right here. Okay, I like it. All right, then I would have a public class get article handler, which is I request handler of the get article request and get article response. And there we go. We got a nice class and all this stuff. Yes. Okay. Okay. Oh, there's no parameters. Let's go ahead and do that. Oh, this shouldn't be. No, this should be string username. Username dot value. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're not going to do any of that stuff. We're going to turn get request dot get article should be get article response should have article in it. Get article request. Oh yeah, right. Okay. Get. Yeah, this is not going to be anything returned there. Oh yeah, it's going to return something, right? Favorite response. It's not going to return the article. Any of those things. Just going to return validation errors. That's all it's going to return. Okay, and so this is the favorite response. So get response equals await mediator send get request. Yep. And we're going to return article. It says article, but it should, like, article view, I think, is a better name for it. No, do not do that. Okay. Okay. This is where I check the validation errors. If favorite response dot validation errors. Oh, what's the magic of, yeah, right here. Basically, as long as it's not null and there's something in there, then we're going to return unprocessable with the dot validation errors dot to CSV. Yep. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing here, probably. Yep. Okay. Great. We're cooking now. I kind of bit off two endpoints though at the same time, but Really, I'm not getting to the other endpoint yet. I just need the handler for that endpoint. Okay, so let's go through and make sure this makes sense. We get all the auth info. We're going to favorite something. So we send it off to Mediator. After that's done, it'll be marked as a favorite. Oh, you know what else it needs to do? Let me think about this. So the favorite needs to be pulled from the database, but the favorites count. That's not something I want to query every time. Definitely not. So I want to increment that. Forgot about that part. So that's here in the data service. Okay, I need to increment favorites count, but only if I've not favorited this before. Only if this author has not favorited this before. This might be a place for an ACID transaction, actually. Let me think about this. Because we're updating two pieces of data, two separate documents here. Another option is in the article, I could put a list of users who have favorited the article. But I don't think that's going to be conducive to other endpoints, and that's going to affect how big of an article I could write. Because potentially if I write a long article, a lot of people like it, that's going to test the limits of the document size. So I think I need to keep them separate, because favoriting is unbounded. So therefore I'm updating two pieces of data, which means ACID transaction, right? I think so, because they both have to succeed or neither. Otherwise, I could end up with, that wouldn't be the end of the world, right? But inaccurate favorite count. And possibly an exploit to really pump up the favorites of a certain article. Okay. So it's transaction time. I've not done a transaction before. So this is a new feature here. So let's go ahead and, hey, editor, if you're watching this, this is a brand new section of doing an ACID transaction with Couchbase. So I need to bring in, first, a library for this. Couchbase transactions. It's a separate library from the Couchbase SDK. Okay. And I got to remember how to do this. Okay, so I think I just go and say transaction equals new transaction in Couchbase. Where is it? Let's see. Or is it maybe like transaction? No, it's not what I want. Let's see. All right, I'm going to have to look at the docs. Or GitHub, Copilot. What is the, let's see. How do I create a transaction for Couchbase with the Couchbase transactions library in C#? Let's see if this knows how to do this. Okay, transaction.new it says right here. Let's just try this. Couchbase.transactions.transaction. No, that can't be right. Transactions dot. All right, let's look at the docs. I don't think Copilot has got it right. Transaction, .NET SDK. Here we go. This is under, okay, yeah. Got it. Transactions library. We did that. Okay. Transactions.create. Okay, so it is transactions. Create. So to do that, I need a cluster. I don't think I have a cluster. And then a config. Okay, so how do I get cluster? Can I get that from collection? Equals, I need this anyway. Wait, I have it down here already. Okay. I can get probably, let's see, can I get collection dot scope dot bucket dot cluster? Is that going to work? I think it does. Okay. So now I can put cluster right in here. So you might be wondering why I don't need a whole cluster. The answer is a transaction can take place across an entire cluster if you want to. In fact, almost every transaction is going to involve the whole cluster anyway. Yeah, potentially a transaction could happen between two different buckets, for instance. That's what needs to happen up there at the cluster level. I guess we could, there could be a helper or something where you, instead of a cluster, you put in collection and it just does this itself, but it's fine. Okay. And then a config equals new transaction config. So we're going to specify durability level. So durability level, this is a tricky thing, because if we're developing against a local single node cluster, we can't have any durability, because durability requires replication. And if you only have a single node, you have no replication. So durability level, but I think durability level I need is, all I really need is majority. I think that's plenty safe for the situation. Time span, and there's also needs to be a, I thought that was a default value though. What's going on here? Does not include, do I need to specify all these things? See, I thought I only needed to specify a couple things. Durability majority, I'll explain what that means in a minute. Time span from seconds, 30. Why do I need all these other things in here? Cannot access internal. Oh, I can't use this constructor. I think this is because I can do this, right? Something like this? No? No? Gosh, I've done this before. I just don't do it very often, so I don't have the syntax right in my head. Let's go back to the docs here. Transactions config builder is what it suggests to use here. Okay, so let's do that. Just do this, I guess. I don't know. Config dot durability level, majority, which I'm using Capella, so this will work fine. I'll explain what that means in a second. And I think I'll just leave the default. Everything else, time span stuff. Okay. So I'll get to that durability level in a second, I promise. Hey, Surly, sorry. How's it going? Are you making fun of my coughing? But welcome. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being. Thank you for joining me today. I'm doing something for the first time in Conduit. I'm using a ACID transaction. You weren't making fun of coughing. That's fine. You can make fun of my coughing if you want to. But I'm doing an ACID transaction in Couchbase for the first time this project. And so this is how they work with the Couchbase library. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to accuse you of trolling when you weren't actually trolling. I know you will take full credit for trolling. No, it's totally fine. Okay, so this is the way a transaction works in Couchbase is, or in the SDK anyway, sorry, the Couchbase Transactions Library, which uses the SDK, is I start by getting a cluster. So that's like the servers, basically, all the collection of servers, the cluster object. Then I specify a config. There's some good defaults there, but the most important thing to specify is durability level. And then you get this transaction object, transaction create, and then for the transaction, everything you do inside of run async that uses this context object is part of the transaction. So for instance, I can't say collection because that's not part of the context. What I can say instead is context dot, what can I say for context? Actually, I wonder if I can't use transactions within a set. That might be a problem. But basically, you see all these operations here, insert, remove, replace, and so on. Those have to be run on context. So if this is the case, I might not be able to do this transaction here. Okay, let's think this through here. I have a set that's an extension method on collection. I can't get to collection from context, I don't think. Does any of these return collection? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so what I have to do, I think instead, I don't really want to do this, but I could do a SQL query. But then it's not using this nice little set abstraction here. I have to dig in and do it manually, which is what I'm hoping to avoid. Let's see if there's anything in the docs where I can get the collection. Key value operations, yep. SQL++, yep. Mixing them, yep. Doesn't look like I can use the data structures. Unless I could somehow construct a set. Couchbase.datastructures.persistent set string. Right. So this is an object. But I think that's got internal. Yeah, it's an internal constructor, so I can't do that. If I could use those, then I could construct it myself. Just here, but I can't do that. That's internal. They don't want me to do that. So that's no bueno. Okay, well that's a bummer. Makes this a little more complicated. it makes me kind of want to look at how other people did it, which is one of the values of the real world project. So let's go with, I want to look at, I want to see how Spring did it. So this is Java. It's a Java version. This was created by my colleague Laurent. I want to see how he did that. So let's look at the controller, article controller. Looking at the favorites. There's a favorite service. Single article. I'm not really sure what this syntax is about here, but yeah, author's details. So yeah, it looks like he did something similar. This authentication. That might be built into Spring. I don't know. Let's look at this service then. Service. Favorite service. Nope, that's the interface. Favorite service. Impl. Where's the favoriting? What the heck? Is it just in some sort of AutoWire situation here? So let's look in repository. Favorite. Okay, this is some sort of magic that's doing. I don't know what Spring is doing behind the scenes. Let's look at another one. I expect Ottoman's probably doing some similar magic, right? But let's have a look. Controllers, articles, probably. Favorite article. Okay, so it looks like all it's doing is updating that article or adding it to where's the key it's using? Updated article, let's see. To article response, that's interesting. Where's it actually favoriting it at? Let's see. Login user favorites. Okay, so there's this favorite method here. Right here is the where it's okay. Favorite articles push. Yeah. Okay, so this is not using a transaction at all. In fact, I'd argue this is probably not a good implementation because notice here it's incrementing this favorites count every time, no matter what. So I could click on favorite 100 times, potentially, if the UI lets me, but certainly the back end would let me favorite an article for days and just increment that over and over and over again. So I would argue that's probably not the right way to do it. So we're in new territory here. Alrighty. So I think I can't use this set, unfortunately, and this might be something I need to ask and make a note to myself. See if there's a request for this already, like using data structures within a transaction in .NET, but of course across the board. Is there a ticket for this? Is it on the roadmap? If not, should I create one? Okay, so make a note to myself to do that. So basically I don't have that nice little abstraction, so I gotta do it manually, which is okay. We can do that. It should not be called follow key, this should be called favorite key. Whoop. Okay. So I need to do two things. I need to add username to, add slug to favorite document, increment favorite count in article. We'll also need to check to see if user has already favorited this article. If they have, then just end, bail out. No reason to throw an error or anything. It's just done. I've already done it. Add slug to the favorites document and increment favorite count. And we'll only do these things if the user has not favorited the article yet. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so I've got the favorites doc equals await context dot get my favorite key. What? Oh, I need to pass. What do I need to? Oh, I need to pass in the collection, which is collection favorite key. Now it's possible that document doesn't exist yet. So my nice little abstraction would do this for me. So early dev, you could use Notepad++ to leave notes for yourself. The backup system will keep your document, even if you don't make the active saving, is very useful. If your machine crashes, you lose your notes and you shut down without remembering to check, you can lose them also. Believe me, I know this, right? If you look here, this is just the tip of the iceberg. All these news, new 5, new 15, all these files, this is like the third page of my Notepad++ tabs. So what I'm doing with putting that into Notepad right here instead of ++ is going to make me mentally have to address this before I do any shutdowns or anything like that. So this is kind of like prioritizing it for me. That's not necessarily the best system. I'm actually trying to work with a new system of kind of note-taking knowledge management called Logseq. And I'm not quite sure how to work that into my daily, you need to do this reminder system. Because there's a lot of personal stuff in Logseq. I don't just want to mix them up. I could have two different Logseq databases, I guess. But I'm experimenting with that. We'll see how that goes. But right now, yeah, it's a bunch of Notepad++ tabs and a Notepad Notepad instances. Yeah, it's a mess. It's just like a desk, a bunch of sticky notes everywhere, basically. But I don't really do sticky notes. So, okay. So it's possible that does not exist, right? So if that doesn't exist, is there not a try get, right? Yeah, there's not. It's another thing. Make a note to myself. There is no. What about try get async within a transaction? That might be a very .NET specific one. Because there is a try get async on collection, but there's no try get async here. None of them are your password, your sticky notes on the side. Yeah, I don't do sticky notes. I use them, but not for that kind of stuff. Like they're out in the other room there. I use them for other stuff, but barely. Okay, so I need to first, does favorites doc exist? Oh wait, is there an exist here? There isn't. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm really running into some about exists within a transaction. In .NET All and .NET All. Really running into some limitations of this SDK. When shift left right cursor will save you a few milliseconds when moving the active window from one screen to another instead of reaching for the mouse. I understand, Surly. I am nervous about using those while I'm on a live stream because there is some of these tabs that have personal content, sensitive content, and I don't want to accidentally show any of those things on the screen. So, but yes, that's a shortcut I learned recently. Win Shift, and also just Win left and right to like switch desktops and stuff. So yeah, not that window. Don't want to do that. You know, some of the stuff is my bank account and personal email and stuff like that. You know. So there is no context exists. Yikes. Okay. I've seen a few streamers do that. Yeah. And you, Surly Dev, would likely make a clip of that, right? Hey, here's Matt's bank account info. Okay, so I mean, I have to just kind of hope that this is an exception that it throws, or a document exists exception. So I'm getting the document, it doesn't exist. So it throws an exception. I have to catch that here. And go ahead and let me think about this. See, all this stuff would be handled by the set if I just had that. Just down a little bit. Oh. Is there a better way? Is there a better way to do this? A more efficient way to do this? Because there is something called upsert. But upsert will not check for duplicate slugs. What about, is there touch? No, nothing like that. All I have is get, insert, let's get optional. What is optional? Let's get optional, I think. Get optional. What does that do? It doesn't have any... No documentation there. I don't know what that does. Okay. Oh, whoops. What else do I have? I've got remove, replace, rollback, query. Actually, isn't even an upsert. My goodness. Upsert might be not possible to implement because of the way transactions work. So that I kind of understand. Okay, it's turning into quite a method. Okay, I can actually create that outside the transaction. In fact, let's make that its own method. Ensure favorites document exists. So I'll just make this private, and I'll go ahead and say favorites doc equals, well, we get collection here. This is the kind of stuff that the no upsert, how about a staging table? Well, again, we're in NoSQL, there's no tables. But that is basically how transactions work behind the scenes, is with staging data. That would be how it does that behind the scenes. Basically what I'm trying to do is update two documents in one transaction, and I don't see how a staging table would help there. But what I need to do first is make sure that this document might not exist yet. User maybe has never favorited anything before, and so I have to make sure that favorite document exists. It'll be empty, but it has to at least exist. So I can say await collection dot exists. What's the best way to go about this? So it's username favorite, like that. And so if favorites exists, then we're good. Otherwise, we need to collection dot touch. Not touch. You're only half listening. That's fine. That is fine. So with the full collection, I can do an upsert. But I'm worried about a race condition. I want to do an upsert, but I don't. If there's something already there, like something. Let's say they click on it twice, really quick. I don't want this to wipe out anything that's already in there. So there's a spot right here, a race condition where someone could add a favorite, and then if I go ahead and upsert the document, it's going to basically be wiped out. Which I think so. I need a lock for this, right? Does the favorites doc have a CAS? It does have a CAS. So I can go ahead and let me just get this ID. Pull that out. Favorite doc ID. Okay. Upsert. Favorite doc ID. And it's going to be basically a new list of strings, empty list of strings. But I need to specify where do I set the CAS? You don't use a CAS with upsert, do you? So I've covered this before in another blog post. So we do an insert. Wait, no, that's not right either. Where do I put that CAS value? Hey. Is it another option? Or is it another parameter? No. Oh, I can explain what CAS value means as soon as I figure out how do I use the how do I specify the SDK. Oh no, there wouldn't be a CAS with insert either. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, you know what? This is okay. This is okay. If there's a race condition, the insert will fail. So if there's already a document there, it will fail. Which is fine. All I want is the document to exist. I want document exists exception. And that's fine. Okay. This is an edge case of an edge case. So I'm maybe being a little too paranoid, but in any case, return, right? Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, does this document exist? If so, we're good, bail out. If not, try to create a brand new document with that's an empty array. And if that fails, that means there's a race condition somewhere between here and here. It got created. But that's okay. I don't need you to do anything. As long as the document exists, we're good. Okay, so I think we're good there. CAS value, don't need to explain it now, but it's basically a way to implement locking in Couchbase. I was trying to figure out a way to lock the document so that I would avoid race conditions. I don't need it in this case. Okay, so we can assure at this point now we know that document exists. We don't have to worry about that. So now I can just forget this try catch. Get the favorites document. How do the async function calls work in that function? In which function? This one right here? Right here? What do you mean by how do they work? You have never used async. Oh, okay. Well, it's a C sharp await and async and await line 62, 69, 63, etc. Yeah. So basically, the way async and await works in C sharp, and I'm not going to explain it very well, but basically any method marked with async can now call asynchronous methods within it. So this one's called async. And then any method that returns a task or a task of t can be awaited. Right? So this is Git collections async. This is part of the Couchbase SDK. So it is a async method. Actually, it uses value task. Do I have zoom it on here? It's not going to work anyway. Yeah, there you go. So another option is, well, that's async. Yeah, so you can see here, this is an exist async function. This is part of the Couchbase SDK. It's asynchronous. It returns task of iExist result. So if I say await that, it's not going to return a task. It's going to return iExist result. iExist result is what's going to return here. Right? If I took off this await, then it's going to say, no, that's not right, because you're returning a task of iExist result instead, which I don't want that because I want to await it anyway. So this is just kind of C Sharp's implementation of, and .NET's implementation of async and await. Now, what actually gets compiled behind the scenes is a whole state machine built around async and await. It handles all those conditions for you. To my understanding, it's very similar to the way JavaScript does it now, or I think JavaScript, with async and await. Very similar implementation. But yeah, what this means is that this is asynchronous. So anytime you're calling out to I/O, databases, network, anything like that, it should be asynchronous in .NET. So you're not going to block the thread waiting on a database. It's going to make a call to the database, probably a thread, or it could just be pausing this thread and going on to take other tasks. The actual threading details, again, .NET C# handles that behind the scenes. So when I say thread, it may not actually be a thread behind the scenes. It may or may not be. It kind of manages that thread pool for me. So, but that's the way it works. So you have to basically use async and await, and has to also use task or task of type T, and .NET will handle the asynchronous details for you. I hope that explains it. If you've not used it before, await's been around for a long time in C#, but it is true that even though it's been around for years and years and years, that not everyone's familiar with it yet. But we're definitely approaching the point where you're going to have to be. You're going to have to start using async and await when it comes to I/O and network and all those sorts of things. Okay, so favorites equals favorites doc, content as, and it's a list of string. Hopefully this works. Never tried this before. So basically this is just to check if favorites, I will wait until I find a good blog post to read about it. I'll create a task on my to-do list. All right, if you want somebody to really explain this inside and out, I would highly recommend Stephen Cleary. This guy right here is the expert on concurrency in C#. He's written a book on it. I've had him on a podcast before. He's created libraries to help with async. And he blogs about it, writes about it, does all kinds of stuff. This is the guy I'd recommend starting for async and await in .NET. And if you really want to get into it, definitely check out this book. It's not brand new book, but the async and await stuff I don't think has changed all that dramatically since he's written this book. So it's still a very solid reference book. And the guy knows just about everything about async and await. So highly recommend that. Okay, favorites not equals null. And favorites, this guy seems to clearly be the guy to await his blog post. You are really, really trying to stretch those puns there, Surly. Favorites.contains the slug. So if it contains the slug, then we're just going to, can I say rollback? There's nothing to roll back really, but basically I just want to bail out of this. What is going on, Visual Studio? Because we're inside of a Lambda probably. Okay, so all we're doing here is checking to see that the user has already favorited this article. If they have, then we bail out. Okay, the next thing we do is we add it. You know, it's not going to ever be null. I don't think that's ever going to happen. So let's just stick to this. Favorites add slug. Okay, and that means I have to then await context dot not upsert, replace the favorites doc with this new content, like so. So this is what's going to actually hit the database. Or in fact, to your point, Surly, this is going to stage the data in the database in something called XAdders, which is just metadata about a document. Yes, definitely. I mean, all joking and puns aside, Stephen Cleary, that's the guy to look to for async await. I am not the greatest explainer of it. I mean, I could probably spend a lot of time trying to explain it better, but all I really need to know is that await, async, and task of T. If you get anything else fancier than that, you definitely want to consult Stephen. And I also recommend highly, do not try to make your synchronous code, or do not try to make your asynchronous, do not try to make any asynchronous calls synchronous. Do not try to do that, except as a very, very last resort, because you will run into problems, locking and so on. You want to avoid that. Basically, that's like half the questions in the Couchbase forum, because the Couchbase.NET SDK is entirely async, which makes sense. It's a database. Entirely, well, almost entirely async, like 95% async. So people come in and they're like, I'm trying to do this thing with Couchbase, and what I'm doing is, instead of this, await, I'm saying .get awaiter and get result, which is technically could work, but it could also lead to locks and all kinds of problems. So use await, embrace it as much as you can, which might require some rewrites, unfortunately. Okay, so add slug to favorite document, so that's going to do that. And then increment favorite count in article. Let's see. There isn't a subdocument in there either. Oh my goodness. Not there. I want to do this note right here. So I'm making another note. So lots of this stuff is missing. I'm sure I'm not the first person to ask about this. What about subdoc in transactions? So I'll just probably need to go look through the issues, see if these are in the backlog, or if there's maybe a workaround that I'm not aware of, etc. So unfortunately, we need to get the whole article out, update one field, and then save the whole article back out. Oh, that's a real pain. So get, it is collection, and it's the slug. Maybe it's smart enough to do that behind the scenes. I don't know. Probably not, but we'll see. Equals article doc dot content as article man. Okay, and then I just need to say article dot favorites count plus, and then await context dot replace async article doc with article. We got an ad starting in 3 minutes. It's possibly null reference. I don't think so, because when I save an article, article handler. Yes, I always give it a 0. So there we go. Technically, it could still be null, hypothetically, in some bad situation. But okay, so that's my transaction. It's a lot more complicated than I thought it would be, unfortunately. So we make sure the favorite document exists. So after this method runs, that favorite document will exist. It might be empty, but it will exist. Then create a transaction. I told you I explained durability level. I'll get to that in a second. In the transaction, see if the user has already favorited this article. So if it already contains the slug, then we're done. Bail out. Don't do anything else. Roll back. Nothing really to roll back, but roll back and then return. Otherwise, we're still in transaction, so there's no race conditions possible in here. Add that slug to the document, and then increment the favorites count in that article. And then there's an implied commit here. I don't have to say, I don't have to do this. That's implied. So it's already long enough, no sense making it longer. So that is going to do that. So definitely need to run some tests on this for sure, because it's complicated. It's going to be hard for me to simulate race conditions, but I just want to make sure at least it works in the happy path. Okay. Good. So after this ad break, I will go ahead and explain durability level. But in the meantime, I'm going to create some tests. Integration test, and this will be in articles, and I'm going to directly test the data service. Data access. No, not data access. It's in data service. So it's under services, yes. And this is going to be articles data service. And I'm going to be testing the favorite. Favorite tests. These are my favorite tests. Okay. Ad break starts in less than 10 seconds. I'll see you on the other side. Okay. So I'm trying to get in the habit of making everything async and task. Turbo for the win. Surly Dev is sticking around because he subscribes to Twitch Turbo. Okay, I want to favoriting for the first time. Range, act, assert. Okay, I need an article to exist. Yes, right? Article equals creates article helper. Do I have a helper for that? I have a create article request helper. Helpers, data. Oh, article helper. I have assert exists. Okay. Create in database. Article, creating database. Okay, so I'm creating a brand new helper here. This needs to be, this needs to be an extension method. Which means I need to set it up in the setup. Handlers, create article, handler tests. So pretty much this right here doesn't like this. So I've already got broken tests. We're not going to get to update article today. I'm telling you that right now. collection for, oh, this needs to be up here. Get required service. iConduit, favorite, collection provider. Yay. Okay, fine. But I'm only here for copying this stuff. Yeah, this needs to be override for sure. Yes, and all I care about probably is, ooh, actually. While I'm here, I may as well do this before I forget. iConduit. Ad break over. Welcome back, everybody. Okay. I probably need articles, and I also need favorites. Okay. Don't need tags. Article, yes. Favorite, yes. These are my collection providers. These are, you can think of these as Couchbase methods. Inconsistent modifiers. What? Oh, okay. Didn't realize you cared that much, ReSharper or Visual Studio or whoever. Okay, so this needs to be, an article needs to exist. Okay. Collection equals await. This needs to be async as well. It doesn't need to return anything though. Does it? Maybe it does. Yes. Okay. Await this dot get collection async. Yes. Fair article equals. I'm just going to go ahead and create this one anyway because I need it. Create. Okay, and this is going to be for article equals new article, return article, and to do all the meat right here. We'll get to that in a second. Article create. Let's just call it create article. Just be a little more explicit. Okay, so creating the article, then I need to actually put that in. Insert async article.slug article. Okay, great. So now I need to actually have something that creates up kind of a common sense, valid article for testing purposes. So this is how I do it. This is called the mother pattern. I've gone over this before. It's basically a bunch of optional parameters. Oh, this needs to be nullable, right? And we test to see if those are actually set to something. If they're not, we make something reasonable. So we'll do a random equals new random. And article dot, no. Article dot favorites count equals, now what I do here is I say favorites counts equals random dot next, somewhere between, oh, this is longs. Okay, that's fine. I can cast it. Somewhere between 0 and 100, which will always be in a range of an integer. So no problem with that cast there. So what this is saying is if you didn't give me a favorites count, I'm going to create a random one. Otherwise, I'll use the one you gave me. And why do I want to do this? Well, some cases I only want to override a few of those properties for testing purposes. So this just makes it easier to get those. This is going to be created at. This might also be a nullable. It's a date time offset. Is that right? Why are you, what is this? Create an action result nonsense. Go away. Same thing here, created at. This might be a place where, how do I get a random date? I don't know. Date, time, offset, just put now in there. It might be a place for GitHub Copilot to help. Let's see if we can do that. So for each property of article, create initialization statements of the form. Putting in a sensible value for each property. Let's see what happens. See if it knows what the heck I'm talking about. Okay, look at that. That's pretty good, I would say. So I don't have all those things yet, so I know I'll need them. String title equals null. Let's just make sure that I want to make sure I get everything. So title equals title. What is it? This also needs to be nullable? Okay. Yeah, okay, got it. Description. What am I doing here? String description equals null. Okay, and then I can say article.description equals description. String body equals null. Article.body equals body. String slug equals null. Really, that should be, yeah, I need to change the actual values here because that should be dependent on the title unless it's overridden. List of string tag list equals null. Tag list. And last one is updated at. That's another datetime offset. Updated at equals null. I don't have updated yet in there. Where's updated at coming from? Where did it get that? Huh. How did it know there's going to be an updated at? Do I have updated at anywhere? I don't. Interesting. It kind of just assumed there'd be an updated at. I don't know where it pulled that information from, because I think there is an updated at in the spec, but I haven't gotten there yet. I haven't gotten to an update yet. So do I have everything? Article dot favorites counts, body, created at, description, slug, tag list, title, author username. That needs to be in there too. I don't know why I didn't pick that one up. And the last one was favorited. Yeah. So that's just a true or false. Bool favorited. Okay. Alrighty. Favorited.value. So that's going to create an article for me with some test data. I'm going to create some more random names for this. I'm not going to hard code them. Get random file name. Put the word title in there. Description. I think I have a random dot string. Yeah, I'm going to put a random string of a lot more characters in there. let's just do random string instead. I'll make that, I don't know, 20 characters. Username. Dot string 10 characters. Body is huge, right? Let's make this like that. Make it 8 characters. Not 80. Okay. Body. Random dot string of 10,000 characters. Slug. So this needs to slugify the title, unless it's specified. So new slug helper. Slug service, I guess. New slug helper. Generate slug from the title. I don't think that has any. Oh, this is asynchronous. Why is it asynchronous? It doesn't need to be asynchronous at all. I think I was originally thinking about making this use a database, but I don't need to do that anymore. I probably just broke some stuff by doing that. Yep. Well, okay, we'll get there. And tag list. Don't I have tags somewhere else? Maybe not. Okay. I'll just put some... Why doesn't it want to call this? Because this needs to be nullable? Yeah. So tags I've been using are Couchbase, baseball. That's probably good enough. Okay. So that'll create a article in memory. What is this green for? Typo. I think that's right. Okay. In memory, and then this one will actually take that and then put it into a database. And then I need to return that, of course. Okay, good, good, good. Back to my tests. Create an article in the database, yes. And then I need to, I don't need to create an actual user, because it doesn't, this data service is not going to check, excuse me, see if that user exists. So I can just come up with a username. Username doing the favoriting is, I don't know, user, get random file name. Sure, why not? I could, I think I have this, user helper, create user. I can just do that. Okay, then the actual data service needs to be in here too. So the, was it article data service? Was new? Article data service? Yes, that's fine. I don't know why it needs to do that. But anywho, articles provider and favorites provider. Yes. Okay. Result equals weights, articles, data service, favorite, the article.slug. Oh, this needs to be await. See, even I forget the await sometimes. Article.slug and user.username. What don't we like here? Oh, because it doesn't actually have a result. Okay, but I need to assert that that exists. So I can say favorite collection provider assert exists. And the way I usually go about this is, where's my helper at? Article helper. I did one up here. Yeah. So I'll have to create another one here. This is going to be extension not on articles though, but on favorites. And it's going to be username. Okay. So get the collection get the favorites in database equals await collection, get async, and the key is username. Oh gosh, see, here's a problem with this, is that I don't want to get it wrong. Username. Yikes, that should be like that, first of all. Just found a bug and fixed it. Okay, username favorites. Just as favorite. Favorite. Should be favorites though, right? That would make more sense. Here's a problem with this approach, is this is hard coding it everywhere, but I'm not really sure the best way to do that and still use this template here. So that's a problem to come to later. That's definitely some coupling that I don't like. But anyway, favorites in database. Okay, and we'll say favorites in database object equals favorites in database dot content as list of string. And if assertions not equal null, then we'll go ahead and run the assertions. Favorites database object. Oh yeah, these aren't. This is just list of string. And then if we made it this far, this isn't user, this is article. Comments lie. The favorites was retrieved and the assertions passed. Okay, because this will throw an exception if that doesn't exist, which is what we want in this as assertion. So there we go. Back to the test. Assert exists on the user.username, and then let's do X, I guess. Basically, we want to assert that that X contains the article slug is true. So this is asserting, well, should be a wait, right? This is asserting two things: that the favorites document for this user exists, one, and two, that the article I favorited is in there. Okay. All right. We're going to run it and see what happens. Probably, okay, yeah, we're going to have compiler errors because I changed a bunch of stuff. I'm not actually testing this yet, so I don't want to do that. Throw new non-implemented exception, because I want to come back there for sure. What else? Oh, yeah, doesn't need to be asynchronous. What else? Yeah, I had mocked this to be asynchronous. Doesn't need to be anymore. Okay, there we go. Now let's run this test. Okay, invalid port number. What? Okay, this makes me think that some of my connection strings are wrong. Let me have a look here. User secrets off the screen. Oh, yeah, yep. I made a typo in my user secrets. So I gotta go and check them again. Not sure how I did that. I'm gonna blame that on the recovering from this sickness. Okay. Fix those. Recompile. Run the test. This is running it against Capella. Service management is either not configured or cannot be reached. Okay, so it means I forgot to add something to startup, right? What did I forget to add to startup? Got favorites in there. I don't have, although I don't think, no, that's in there. What favorite didn't it add? Let me or what service didn't it add? Can you give me more detail on that? Service not on one-time setup. Service not available. Make sure my database is still running. It's supposed to turn off at 1, I think, which is well after I'm usually done with my streams. Yeah, still running. So what am I doing wrong here? Let's just go through this. I'm pretty sure I missed something in the program. Setting up my dependencies. Yeah? Let me look at the user secrets again, just to make sure I didn't make another typo somewhere. This is in tests, especially. Conduit integration tests. Yep. Oh, no. Nope, that's not it. Okay, I'm going to set a breakpoint and figure this out. That seems to work. Connected to the cluster seems to work. All buckets doesn't seem to work. That's where it's failing. Why? Why? Maybe it's not connecting to... you know, one thing I need to check. This could be an issue, is if I go to allowed IP addresses. My IP address may have changed. Nope, that's not it. Okay. Okay, I'm going to have to run this debug off the screen because I'm going to be looking at some information that might be sensitive. Okay. So let me just see, what is it using from this config? That's correct. That's correct as far as I know, unless I remove that user. Okay, let me just check. Did it log me out already, or is that a different window, maybe? Okay, yeah. Settings, no, databases. Dennis Ritchie. Nope, settings. Database access. Do I still have that user? Yes, I do still have that user. Okay. So that seems fine. What is the problem? Through an exception, service not available exception. Huh? Well, it seems like it's not wanting to connect to my Capella database. Now, why is that? It's not saying credentials are wrong either. It's just saying I don't want to connect. Yeah, data index query. Those are all the services that should be there. No problem. Why you no connect? Conduit integration test. That is the name of the bucket. Let me just double check. Conduit integration test. Yes. I'm wondering if it. Gosh. I'm going to create a. No, I don't think that's a problem because this has worked before. I was thinking another special character in the password issue, like I had a while ago. It was a really frustrating issue. I don't think that's what this is because I've used this password before. Make sure it's the right connection string. Oh my goodness. It's not the right connection string. Is it going to change connection strings every time I disconnect and reconnect? That could be a serious problem. That's definitely worth a note. Okay, well that's definitely the issue. Let me go and update my user secrets accordingly. Oh, no, it looks like it didn't change the connection string. It's just I hadn't updated it in one place. Okay, let's just double check here. Yep, okay. All right, so it's probably fine. Alrighty. Back over. Here we go. One thing I've learned about myself is I have multiple environments. I'm really bad at managing connection strings. Or Visual Studio is bad at it. So I need to figure something out for that in the long run. That's really a me problem, though, not a Conduit problem. All right, seems to be running. Is it going to pass? No service for type. Okay. So this is, yeah, this is one I forgot. I thought I added it though. Oh, there it is. Is there another place I need to add those? Let me look at this. No service for type iConduit favorites collection provider hasn't registered. That might be in the test itself. Yeah. Whoopsie daisy. So that it failed right here. All right, let's try it again. Danger of copy and paste. It's 11:30 right now. We've got about half an hour left in the stream. And I would just be happy to get this favoriting portion working by the end of the stream. I was really hoping to get the Git and even start on the updates, but I definitely changed my plans after looking at the spec. And favoriting taking a lot longer, took a lot more thinking than I expected. Okay. Value cannot be null. Now what? It's the same place. So is it actually doing anything out there on I got two different windows open here. Is there anything in here I should know about? Looks like no. History of object. What does that mean? Oh yeah, migration history. What is this history of object business? Anywho, so it didn't actually create anything. It just bombs out here. And the get all buckets value cannot be null. Where is it pulling a null value? Ah, boy. Okay, we're going to go off screen again. This is just, again, with me probably not managing connection strings in the optimal way. Okay. Let me just double check. Make sure that's right. Yep, that's right. Okay. Username. Yep. Yep. Okay, everything seems right there. Okay, that seems to be connecting. But what about when I do this? Cluster buckets. Okay, so that worked. Does bucket exist? Okay. What? Why is it? Why was it failing? Now it's going through just fine. Okay, so if I refresh this, should be a bunch of stuff in there. Yeah, okay. Okay. This is a race condition. Gosh. I was doing it again. Why am I connecting to the cluster again? Oh, probably because migrations, right? Does it actually hit the test? Creating database. Okay. Well, why are you going over there? What's going on? Null objects must have a value. This is a whole different error. Oh, okay. So there's definitely an error here. Favorited. I don't know. True. It's always favorited. Sure. So I didn't put that one in there, and for that matter, GitHub Copilot didn't catch that one. So I stepped through it, and it seemed to work just fine. Now I'm concerned that there's some sort of race condition here again. That wouldn't make any sense, though. I didn't do anything wildly different, except for the transaction, I guess. But it's not bombing out there, I don't think. Okay, there we go. Stepping through the test. So we got a nice article creating the database. I can actually go look to see it somewhere. Yeah. Gotta be quick though. Don't want anything to time out. So there's the article, and yeah, so there's the one document. That's the one I created. See, it's got a bunch of random stuff there. Okay, creating a user in memory, that should be pretty fast. Favoriting the article. This is an ACID transaction. Why is it hitting this? Why? What is going on? Transaction failed. Okay, well, finally we're in the place I want to be, at least. What is the failure? Exception of type document not found. So inside of this, yeah. Okay, but this should be creating a document though, right? Ensuring favorites document exists. Username favorites. All right, let's walk through it here. That's okay. I don't know why it's throwing me over to those migration classes. That's really weird. Okay, so if we refresh this. The way my integration tests work is that they destroy everything in the database and then build it back up. So it's in the process of doing that, which may not be practical for a very large set of collections and indexes and stuff. But that's what I've been doing with this. So it looks like it's in process of creating some things. Just look at the monitoring while we're hanging out here. So yeah, it's doing a lot of stuff when I'm running these tests. The main thing that's most processor intensive, I think, is the indexes. The index, I should say. Oh, it stopped. It failed. Why is it doing this? What is this? There's got to be a race condition or something. Isn't this where I can usually do like a cluster.waits until ready? That's not done anywhere else? Okay, that should be there, I think. Wait till the cluster is ready. I don't know if that's causing the issue or not, but let's go ahead and try this again. This may be a good argument for running these tests locally instead of going against a cloud. But eventually you probably want to run these tests against a cloud, even if it's just one time, just to make sure they work the same as the local version. And the reason why they shouldn't. Okay, well, there we go. So maybe that was the issue. Okay, now I want to step into this favorite. Okay, so we want to, right now the favorites document does not exist. Oh, hang on, wrong. So if we look inside of this, there's nothing in favorites. 0 documents, okay? After I run this, let's go step through it here. Okay, get the collection provider. Does it exist? It does not exist. I blew it. Darn it. If it doesn't... Oh, wait. No. No, I didn't blow it. Oh, now I got to do this all over again. Yeah, if this exists, return. That's what I want. Yeah, that's what I want. I thought I had it backwards. Okay. All right, we'll run it again. Love waiting for integration tests. Time to get sword fighting, right? Get on those chairs and sword fight. What's this red line down here mean? Some Visual Studio's unhappy about something? Oh boy, we're still going. I mean, this is integration test is doing a lot. This is probably the most involved integration test, and we're going over the cloud, internet to do this. So I understand why it's taking a long time, but this is why you run these tests in a CI server, not on a regular basis, not locally. I still haven't explained this durability level, have I? Well, let's see if how this test does, and then I will go into explaining that. And maybe that'll be the last thing to wrap up with today, is durability levels. And I have a nice little slide to show that. Okay, here we go. Okay, the doc does not exist, so it's not going to return. So insert a doc. Okay, so now that doc should exist. Gotta refresh the UI here. Okay, so that was a favorite document. And I will get those documents. Okay, there it is. And it's empty array. Just what I want. Perfect. Okay. So now let's go back. Our collection, cluster, config, majority, create the transaction. Okay. Now, if F5 here, it's going to hit a breakpoint inside of this. So let's go ahead and do that. It does. Okay. All right. Okay, so we get the favorites doc, and we get the favorites content, and it is empty. Does it contain slug? It does not. So we keep going. We add that slug, which is now added to the collection. Okay. We replace asynchronous. This is going to stage some data in Couchbase. It's not going to actually replace it yet. That doesn't happen until the commit step. It's just going to stage part of the transaction. And that's where it bombs out. The transaction expired. Probably because I'm stepping through it, and transactions meant to be much faster. So, yeah. So let's, okay. All right, well, I'm going to try it again, but I did promise that I would show what the heck is going on with this durability level. And I put together some slides for that. This is part of a presentation that I give on caching, but it's just as useful talking about durability levels specifically. Okay, so here is my presentation, and I want to skip ahead to this part here. So this is not a transaction. This is just a plain insert, but the same thing applies for transactions, is the idea of durability, which is how much Couchbase guarantees that once you save data, it does not get lost. And with a typical traditional database, what this means is that you sit there and wait for it to write to disk or transaction log or whatever, right to a table, and then the database returns to you and says, okay, I have saved it, it's now on disk. Now Couchbase is a little different. It's a distributed database, so there's multiple machines, and it's memory first, so there's a managed cache involved. So this is an example of just inserting data, and durability level options are the ones that I think I showed these in the documentation. So none is the default durability level, which means there's no durability guarantees. Majority persist to active, and persist to majority. Now, no guarantees does not mean that it won't happen. It just means that I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm just firing and forgetting. So what does that mean? So let's look at a Couchbase cluster here. I've made this 4 nodes for the sake of easier math. Now, I will say that durability level with replication of 3 is not going to work. And there's some technical reasons for that. But let's just, for the sake of math, I'm going to say we have a durability level. We want to look at these durability levels, and we want to do it with 3 replicas. So I have 4 nodes. Each piece of data, I need to give me 3 backup copies of it. Okay? So what this means is when Couchbase gets this data, it saves it to memory, guarantees that it's saved to that set of memory there, and then returns. Well, let me take that back. It saves it to memory. Here's the actual architecture. It saves it to memory, and it queues it up to be written to disk, and queues it up to be written to other nodes. So those go into a queue. It does not mean they're saved there yet. It just queues them up to do that. Which means the only thing that's guaranteed with none durability is that it's going to be saved to this memory. These other things, since I have 3 replication, and it's a Couchbase bucket, will be written to disk here and other 3 nodes, backup copies, and will be written to memory, these other 3 nodes. But I'm not going to sit around and wait for that to happen. All I'm waiting for is this. So this is none durability, which means if this node here resets or crashes or is removed from the cluster or whatever at a certain time before it's saved anywhere else, I could lose data. Okay? But this is also the very fastest way to write to that data. Let's increase the durability now. Let's do what's called majority. So this is going to save the data to a majority of memory sets, which means Couchbase is going to say, once it's here, here, and here, then we're considered successful. Then I will return to the user. Everything else is queued up for disk, so nothing's ever written to disk. Nothing's guaranteed written to disk, I should say. And this 4th one is not, they don't wait on this 4th one. We're waiting for the majority. And again, I want to remind you that with 3 replicas, technically you can't do this, but I'm just doing this for the sake of math. It makes it easier on me. Which means, how do we lose data in this case? In this case, now we have to have 3 different nodes fail for us to lose data. So I think that's pretty darn durable. The Capella cluster I'm using actually has 3 nodes, and I think I have durability of 1 turned on, so a little different equation there. But just for the sake of math, like an argument, this is pretty good. We're not waiting on disk yet, so potentially if these 3 nodes crash or remove from the cluster or restart or whatever, before anything's written to disk or before it's written to this 4th memory spot, could lose data. I think the odds of that are pretty good, though, especially for something like number of favorites. If something goes wrong, number of favorites, maybe if the math checks out here, maybe once a year, right? Twice a year. That's okay. We can even crank it up even more. Majority and persist to active. So this means that Couchbase is going to say, I will save it to these 3 memory spots and disk, queue it up to every place else. But as long as it's saved to those 4 places, we're good, and we'll wait on everything else. So we're introducing disk now, which definitely increases latency. It slows down the process. But now what has to happen? 3 nodes have to be reset, removed from the cluster, crash, whatever, and the disk here has to be lost, basically, in that very narrow window of time. So very narrow window of time before it gets persisted anywhere else. Those things have to happen. So pretty good odds, I would say, there. So if you're really, really concerned, something like a financial transaction, and you can do this per operation. You don't have to do this for the whole cluster. It's just, in your application, you can specify durability level, like I said back up here. On this particular insert, I can specify durability level X. On a different insert, I can do durability level Y, Z, whatever. So this one is, again, this is super, super important operation that absolutely, we have no tolerance for any durability issues. This is probably going to be the strongest you'll ever need. But there is one higher level, which is persist to majority. So make sure this data is saved to the majority of disks in the cluster, and the majority of, majority of RAM has to go through RAM first. So what has to happen to lose data here? Again, in that very narrow window of time where data isn't saved to this 4th one, these 3 all have to basically go away. The disks have to be destroyed, totally crash, for that to happen in that narrow window of time. Because if they crash while this operation is happening, it will return an error and say, I didn't do successfully. So it has to be that very narrow window of time. Obviously, a lot more latency here. We're talking 3 network trips. Yeah, 1, 2, 3 at least. And then 3 trips to disk. So a lot more time, but a much, much stronger guarantee. And again, we can't mathematically say with this type of system, we cannot mathematically say it will 100% always save your data in a durable fashion. We can't. I don't know what the math would work out to. In this situation with 3 replicas, it's going to be very, very high percentage. Like, again, don't quote me on this, but a lot of 9s. 99.9, a lot of 9s. But, of course, the trade-off is speed and performance. Now, I should also say, even with something like SQL Server, there's always got to be, just because of the way networks work and the way software works, there's always got to be some period of time where data could be lost. Now, with SQL Server, it's a much more disk-focused system, so it's going to be a very, very, very narrow window. But it's always possible to lose data. Always, always, always. I don't think there's ever a system where you can 100% guarantee you will always save data. So it's always a mathematical possibility that you could lose data, but very, very rare. So that's the kind of the way durability level works, and you need those for ACID transactions, of course, because if you don't have durability with an ACID transaction, that's your D right there. So that's the important part of that. Okay, so that's why here in the data service I specified durability level of majority. I think that's plenty. The only problem with this setting is if I try to run this locally and only have the 1 node, this will not succeed. This will not work. This will say I can't do it. I can't give you that durability level of majority because there's only 1 node. So when you're doing this locally, you might have to then do something like maybe some sort of flag. I mean, there's lots of ways to do this, right? But if def local, whatever. I don't know what the syntax is. I can't remember what it is, but some sort of compiler flag, or you could do some sort of logic here, setting, whatever. That's probably what it should be, is a setting in the secrets or the environment variables. I got an ad break coming up in 2 minutes, 45 seconds. So we'll sit through the ad break and come back, and then we'll finish up. try running this test a few more times. But yeah, that's why I specified durability level majority here. I might have to change that, especially if I'm going to test this locally. But let's go ahead and run this test again. Yeah, right here. And we'll try to get through this transaction faster because it timed out last time. This does take a while to run. Oh, well, this is not good. That's intermittent failure now, even with the wait for cluster thing. That's a bummer. What is the problem? Last time this sort of thing happened, I had to fix a bug in a race condition bug in the migrations tool. It's possible that's the same thing here. Gotta hit that cough button. Okay, we made it. Yep. So that's all good. Okay. So it's going to replace that. That passes. Get the article. Stop doing that. See, that's what I'm worried about, something race condition there. Okay, again, it said transaction failed. Exception document not found was thrown. Where was the document not found? Article. Okay, well, it's got to be this one or this one, right? Because I know this favorites exists. So I'm passing the wrong thing to something. Article, slug. That should be in there. Where's this slug coming from? So I think we're in the ad break right now. So I'm just going to let that ad play out. It's going to be over in 3 minutes. We'll be right about the time for a raid. Article slug. So something going wrong with the slug, maybe. Insert article slug. Yeah, that should work. I bet it's something wrong with the way I'm generating the slug. Probably something like that, but anyway, have to get to that another time. But I think for the most part, the data service there is working, intermittent issues notwithstanding. Just need to figure out what's going on with this portion of the transaction. So, while we're waiting for the ad break to end, why don't I go ahead and check out the Live Coders team, see who's online. Well, I thank you very much for joining me today. And we got Jay Langsdorf. Let's play with the stream setup. Might be interesting to check that out. I got an ad of my own. This is probably non-English. I think I've seen this before. Yeah, it looks non-English. So maybe we'll go Jay Langsdorf today. We'll just make sure. Yeah, Jason Langsdorf. It looks like English. So. I'm not sure what this screen means, but we'll go over there and join Jay Langsdorf. Hope that's the right way to say it. I hope you will join me. I'm going to wait for the ad to finish before I actually kick off the raid. But let's go over and say hi to Jason. Let's say positive and nice things while we're over there. And I hope you will join me again on Friday. Again, assuming I'm not on some crazy jury duty thing. I will be streaming again on Friday. Hopefully, I'll have this issue worked out by then, and I can recap how I fixed it. If not, we'll work through it on Friday with another stream. So that's what's going on with me. That's my schedule. I will be in Dev Up in St. Louis next week. Hey, thank you for the follow at the last minute at the buzzer. It's 7 Airy, or it might be Terry, I guess. Thank you for the follow. I will be at Dev Up next week, early in the week for a conference. I think that's Monday and Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. But so I won't be streaming next Tuesday because I will be at a conference. But if you're in St. Louis area, come say hi. I'll be at Dev Up. It's the St. Charles Convention Center, I believe is what it's called. And great event. I haven't been there in years, but it was a great event last time I went there. And Couchbase will be there sponsoring as well, as far as I know. I haven't really been checking my email very much recently, so I assume we're still on to sponsor, and I'll definitely be speaking as well. My raid timer is about to run out, so I'm going to go ahead and kick it right now. We'll see you over there.